European Commission Executive Vice President for Social Rights and Skills, Quality Jobs and Preparedness, members of the European Parliament, permanent representatives and ambassadors, Executive Director of the European Labour Authority, Directors General and Directors of the European Institutions, Bodies and Services, General Secretary of the European Trade Union Confederation, Chief Executive Officer of Eurochambre, members of the European Economic and Social Committee, and other representatives of trade unions and employers' organizations, representatives of NGOs and other authorities. Ladies and gentlemen, as General Director of New Economy International Forum, I'm delighted to welcome you to this Forum Europa event, made possible thanks to the essential contribution of 5 companies that demonstrate their strong commitment to Europe and its citizens every day: Airbus, Iberdrola, Indra, Microsoft, and Telefónica. As many of you know, just recently we had the great honor of celebrating the 25th anniversary of New Economy Forum with a special ceremony in which we proudly presented the Forum Europa Prize to Mr. Antonio Costa, the President of the European Council. In this first quarter of the century, New Economy Forum and its platforms have established themselves as a true meeting point and a leading forum for debate. They are distinguished by their independence, openness to all, pluralism, and a firm commitment to fostering dialogue and the exchange of constructive ideas and proposals, so that society may find pathways towards sustainable economic development, harmony, and social cohesion. It is in this same spirit that since February 2024, we have also been active here in Brussels under the motto "Ideas to Strengthen the Union." Today, continuing in that vein, celebrating Europe and fostering the exchange of ideas to further strengthen our union, we have the great honor of welcoming Ms. Roxana Mînzatu, European Commission Executive Vice President for Social Rights, Skills, Quality Jobs and Preparedness. Although Vice President Mînzatu's work is familiar to all of you, let me take a moment to briefly present her before giving her the floor. Before joining the European Commission, Vice President Mînzatu built an extensive career in public service and civil society in Romania. She served as Minister of European Funds, where she coordinated investment strategies, public procurement and structural programs, and later as Secretary of State, overseeing the evaluation and monitoring of EU-funded initiatives. She also worked in education and the non-profit sector, strengthening the link between European opportunities and citizens' everyday lives. Executive Vice President Mînzatu brings to the European Commission a unique blend of administrative know-how, social commitment, and European vision. Her professional path reflects a consistent focus on people, ensuring that growth, innovation, and transition go hand in hand with fairness, opportunity, and cohesion. From managing complex European funding frameworks to promoting inclusive policies at national and EU level, she has shown an unwavering dedication to making Europe's social dimension a driver of resilience and progress. Today, as Executive Vice President for Social Rights and Skills, Quality Jobs and Preparedness, she is entrusted with a portfolio that lies at the heart of Europe's social covenant. Vice President Mînzatu leads the EU's efforts to strengthen its social foundations, advancing the European pillar of social rights, promoting quality employment and a just transition in the green and digital transformations, and ensuring that lifelong learning and skills development empower citizens across generations. Her mission also includes fostering youth participation, promoting inclusion through education and sport, and building a genuine culture of preparedness to enhance the Union's resilience in the face of future challenges. We are delighted that Vice President Mînzatu has joined us at Forum Europa to share her vision for this legislature, her priorities for social rights, skills, and employment, and her broader reflections on how Europe can combine social justice with sustainable growth and competitiveness. In recognition of her distinguished career, her proven capacity to deliver both in national and European roles, her steadfast commitment to inclusion and fairness, and her ability to combine empathy with strategic leadership, it is a great honor to extend a warm welcome to Vice President Mînzatu to Forum Europa. Thank you very much, Vice President. Just a quick word before we begin. After the Executive Vice President's speech, as you all know, we will open the floor for questions. I very much look forward to getting them and kindly ask you to write them as clearly and concisely as possible. That would be most helpful. Without further ado, Vice President Mînzatu, the floor is yours.
Thank you so much. What an introduction. I've never had such an introduction. Thank you for having me. You're such a beautiful community, and what a beautiful venue. I would just start by saying that my career was a lot about money for the people. That's the reality. I worked in cohesion policy in Romania, and it brought, some satisfaction, but a lot of frustration too. It showed me that money is not everything. I worked a lot with funds that meant direct investment in people, from skilling, entrepreneurship to, solutions to extract people out of poverty or to create more social economy. Of course, investments for local and communities and national infrastructure. But there was many times frustration because money does not solve everything, and this is a lesson I carry with me throughout my work. Thank you again for having the opportunity to share a bit today about a vision for Europe in a moment that we have this trinity, I would say, hovering above us. And I do believe in this trinity: competitiveness, security, but very importantly, cohesion. And social cohesion is extremely important in all this discussion if we are to talk about the European Union today and tomorrow. Some say that the European Union is looking too much into social protections, too little into competitiveness, that we are, and especially it's my role to reflect much more the job security dimensions, and that we are not doing enough for our innovation. But I think that there's no contradiction between these dimensions. One empowers the other, and this is something that we must not only believe, but put into practice, I think. I've seen an argument recently in a well-esteemed economic publication, one that said our labor laws were written in the 20th century, and in the 21st century they have become shackles. That it is made too costly to fire personnel, and that would mean that it is too risky to be able to experiment. And that, in conclusion, that is the reason, that is why Europe has fallen behind in comparison with its faster-moving competitors. Now, that could be a neat story, but it's also an incomplete one, to say the least. If we are looking around at ecosystems that in Europe lead in technology and innovation, I think we can recognize when we see biotech in Belgium, when we see robotics in Germany, fintech in Sweden. I'll go today in Eindhoven in the Netherlands to see how semiconductors are not only produced. I will visit as ASML, but also to look at how we can solve the labor shortages and the skilling challenge there. And these are countries in the European Union with some of the highest employment protections, but also some of the most dynamic and the most innovative companies in the world. And I know for many the answers will be social dialogue, good collective bargaining, and dialogue and the power of social partners in everything that I will share with you is I think of the essence, especially as we navigate more and more turbulent waters. European companies, some of you are here present, and I thank you for that. There is a survey that says what you think. You will tell me better if it's true. What are the top 3 major obstacles to investments? Availability of skilled staff, of talent, energy costs, and uncertainty about the future. The irony is that the labor market regulations are seen as a greater obstacle, for example, in places like the United States when companies are asked about that. This does not mean that we need to cling to the past. This does not mean that we are not assessing correctly the way that we need to move forward. And our economies and our societies are facing huge transformations, disruptive, many unpredictable, also on many dimensions. These disruptions can and might affect our industries, our jobs, and also our welfare systems. And they do force us to rethink what we learn, how we work, how we prepare for change, how we are able to progress, and how we can continue to protect the most vulnerable. Because as I've mentioned, I think that without a strong social fiber, without strong social cohesion, we cannot really think about competitiveness or security for the European Union project. So my point would be that we need new tools, we need new instruments, we need new policies to tackle the challenges ahead, but what we don't need is a new model or a new paradigm, because we have the best model already, and I would argue that, and many I think believe that as well, the European social model is our selling point, is our strongest competitive advantage in the turbulent times that we are crossing. So I would argue also that Europe's innovation challenge lies not in too much protection, but in fact, mainly in too little investment in people. Talking about investment in skills, in lifelong learning, in mobility of skills alike, in protecting and supporting our talent and our resources, human resources, in times of change. Looking at skills, I've had a conversation with some of you already. You know, I've argued for this, but you know it better. The picture is not at all one that is calming. We start with basic skills assessments, and of course, basic skills talk to us from the perspective of a rather medium-term projection. But basic skills in math, basic skills in literacy, they are declining for our younger generations. And if you do assessments with adults, you would see a lot of challenge as well. We see also a clear mismatch between the skills that are available in the workforce and what is required by the companies, by the industries. Clearly in Europe, we are not, I don't like this word, producing enough STEM talent or STEAM talent. And that is, of course, one of the clear causes of why companies claim that they cannot find the available staff for the opportunities they had. So as I mentioned today, I'm going to visit the semiconductor platform in the Netherlands, and the shortages that are there are absolutely fantastic. And the projection for shortages for skilled workers. Yesterday I met the automotive industry, and we were discussing about the skills and job opportunities for industries that is transitioning to much more electric and green products, electric cars, and all the components that require totally different skill set. And how are we able to support this transition? We are assessing how the training of adults is ongoing, because we were talking about the skill force in the labor market, so the adults in the labor market. We have a target, we monitor it, it's called the Porto target. You know it, 60% of the adults should be in some sort of training annually. We are, by 2030, we are rather behind that target, closing 40%, but slowly. So obviously, a workforce that is unable to keep learning is not able to keep the pace with a world that is moving so fast forward. And as Mario Draghi put it in his report, competitiveness today is less about the relative costs of labor, it is more about the knowledge and the skills that are embodied in the labor force. Another dimension that is part of this picture is labor mobility. We know that, of course, the single market has as one of the main components the free movement of workers, of professionals. But in reality, and we need this to solve this, in reality, there's still a lot of challenge for workers to be able to travel with their skills, with their diplomas, with their talent. The recognition of professional qualifications, be those that are regulated and those that are outside, the Common European Framework, still face many administrative hampering challenges. I have two examples here. Of course, one is about engineers. We have a shortage of engineers, an issue with the attractiveness of the study pathway of engineers. But we are discussing about how we can look at professions such as the engineering profession to introduce it in the automatic recognition process, or looking at physiotherapists, moving away a bit from industry, but also at a continent that is aging, that is, let's say, looking at more longevity. These are examples of professions that we would need to introduce automatic recognition, and for which we would need to deploy tools for faster and better recognition. Just to give a few examples. Of course, mobility is not only about skills. It is not about qualifications that are recognized sooner or faster. It is also about fair labor mobility. There was and there is this ugly face of labor mobility that came with the single market. The exploitation of cross-border workers, the diminishing of social standards, not in all sectors, but if we look at some sectors, agriculture, construction, just let's not go into too many sectors, but they are sectors that are essential for the functioning of the economy, for the way that we are able to supply our population with everything that's necessary. It was obvious in the pandemic how important these sectors are. It is a model that is still, or it is a side of the mobility model that is still not calibrated at the level of the social standards that we want here in Europe. And social dumping is still a part of the story of labor mobility. And also, I wouldn't want, of course, not to signal what we all are bracing for, the impact of digitalization, of AI, and the green transition on our economies and on our jobs. But as I've said it, and this is not my metaphor, it's borrowed, I've said it in many times in the College of Commissioners recently as we approved the Apply AI strategy. AI is not a force that we, or digitalization that we need to prepare to oppose or defend or shield against. I said it's becoming like an environmental force. It's a bit like the rain. Kubilius said it's like the sun. Good. They are elements that are part and will be much more part of our functioning. So, of course, we need to harness the strength of artificial intelligence, but while also being careful to have, when necessary, umbrellas, when necessary, sunscreen. It is always important that we have this balanced approach. Because as we look at the impact of the AI and the digital transition, the green transition, of course, in the same time, in some of our key industries in Europe, like automotive or like steel, we need to also be aware of the impact on jobs and how we have to respond to make sure that these transitions are as smooth as possible and as efficient as possible and as protective as possible for our people. Now I've outlined a bit of the challenges on the solutions. Again, some of them already on the table, or for some we are working upon, or at some of them we are working, or still. The Union of Skills, the first policy tool that we put on the table this spring, looking at putting education and skills at the heart of our competitiveness process, bringing political visibility to the investment that we need together to do with ambition in skills and education, with a clear focus on, more directions, but of course I would say two things: STEM, skilling and education, and vocational training. These are extremely important. Focusing on and investing in skilling where innovation is happening, and the innovation that is raising us in green technologies, AI, cybersecurity, defense as well, and sectors such as these. It is important that we have a strategic investment in skills and education, while the Union of Skills, I will say, but of course this is a wider context that we have here, the discussion. The Union of Skills is also about skilling our citizens for democracy. It's about much more than skills for the labor market. I focus now on economy, jobs, but the Union of Skills is also about how we empower our citizens to be able to be functional online and offline in democracies and in societies. We set in the Union of Skills clear, ambitious targets to get more students into STEM tracks and STEM careers. I invite you, if possible, to reach out to your member states' governments, because now we are in the process of discussing with the member states to support these common ambitions on having STEM targets and also having citizenship as a fifth basic skill. it might seem that I'm here with you talking that, of course, everybody agrees we need more STEM education because it's the sectors where we get good jobs, innovation, and we offer good perspectives to our technicians, to our university graduates, but it's not the case. So it's still a political discussion that is ongoing. So we need a lot of support to really drive our ambition in this direction. The Union of Skills, as I've mentioned, is about a number of directions, but I will just mention what I think is relevant for the way we would implement our ambitions beyond, of course, funding. The governance a bit. We propose to have an advisory, a high-level skills board, a European, so it's a European advisory, high-level skills board that would be able to bring together business leaders, social partners, educators, of course, member states, authorities, so that together they are able to provide the expertise and their advice on how to propose measures to modernize curricula, how to make sure that education matches labor market needs, how to strengthen the cooperation between academia and industry. These are the people that know what the issues are, what the gaps are, and I want this advice to come to us in a, not just in settings such as these, or conferences, or strategic dialogues, or bilateral, but we have a structured support, I would say. Now, this advice, which of course comes on top of the work of the Commission, would feed into a horizontal EU27 human capital recommendation that is to be part of the European semester, and we are already starting with this cycle. So the European semester aligns and ensures the coordination between European objectives and the policies of member states. It's an important process, an important tool, and it's important that we have visibility and that we are able, through this recommendation, to assess the situation of education and skills throughout Europe. Is not going to be country-specific, and we are able to alert and be able to understand how we need to act better together. Of course, education and skills are not the competence of member states, but how we can act better to tackle the challenges and the gaps. Looking at lifelong learning, I will, of course, go a bit to the budget, to the multi-annual financial framework proposal that we put forward for the next 2028-2034 period. Proposal is to have at least, so again, it's a minimum level from which we start, minimum target of 100 billion euros that would be dedicated to purely social objectives. An important share of this would go to upskilling and reskilling of workers. It's the European Social Fund plus type of investment that we have now. It's about the same figure, I would say, though of course I would clearly want more in this budget. Part of the Union of Skills we want to build, of course, so part of the effort will be based on this support, but part of the effort to implement our skilling efforts is also based on the idea of continuing the public-private partnerships. We have the Pact for Skills, where we join hands with the industries to be able to upskill and reskill workers. We're looking at the Pact for Skills started from an initial goal of 25 million workers by 2030, and now we are trying to double this objective. I would also mention a tool that we propose and we introduce also to ensure this transition for jobs in changing industries, the skills guarantee. We are looking at sectors that are restructuring, that are at risk. We need to use the skills guarantee to fuel it up with financial resources, to apply it strategically across industries that are key for Europe. The proposal is, of course, that every resource is impossible, that we use, of course, European Social Fund Plus, but also European Competitiveness Fund. The proposal for the new fund is including this kind of tool. So it's linked with the value chain, with the critical sectors, industrial sectors of Europe. On mobility, next year we will present the Fair Labor Mobility Package. By June, July is the plan, so in the first part of the next year. Part of the Fair Labor Mobility Package will be the Skills Portability Initiative that is about what I've mentioned earlier, solutions to make the recognition of qualifications gained in one country to be used in another country more easily accessible. Faster, broader automatic recognition of professional qualifications, looking at common rules for third country nationals, because we are needing and we are going to continue to need third country resources and talent. We will also propose, looking at the benefits of digitalization, a European digital social security pass that is going to fully digitalize the portable documents that mobile workers use today on paper in order to access their social rights across the EU, depends on where they work. We will also look at strengthening the European Labour Authority's role, power to do more and better joint inspections, to tackle abuses, including in cases that involve third country nationals. This is how we are looking into better tapping into the potential of the single market. Finally, very soon, December, we are presenting the Quality Jobs Roadmap. That is about putting people first when we are talking about working conditions, digitalization, fair transitions. I've spoken a lot about skills, but the shortages that we have in some sectors are due to lack of skill and talent, and in other sectors, it is due to poor working conditions, unattractive working conditions. And this needs to be tackled. We are looking now at labor shortages that account to some 50 million inactive Europeans, and of course the reasons, the categories they belong to, the rationale is different. But for all of these, we need to make sure that we put forward better policies so that we connect them with the labor market, and we need to start, of course, with wages. We have the minimum wage directive, which is in place and helps a lot, but we also need to continue to look at health and safety in the workplace, to look at health and safety also from calibrated perspectives related to psychosocial risk, related to climate in certain parts of Europe, also to more, digitalized work, ergonomic health and safety elements, because people are more and more sitting and working from their devices. Hybrid work is so much part of our current reality. We need to look at algorithmic management, what happens when teams of people are managed and coordinated by algorithms and not by a human manager. We need to overall think of how we can make the work environment more supportive. And this also goes to, of course, initiatives that would mean better access to affordable childcare, to long-term care. This is also part of a friendlier work environment, supportive environment for jobs. This is an important part of our initiative. It will include also a launch of a consultations for a Quality Jobs Act, looking at the need that for some elements we would need legislative action as well. I would not finish without one of the important policies that we are preparing, and it's, I think, the most difficult, if you ask me, the anti-poverty strategy. How do you fight poverty? Of course, the speeches that I make and all the work that we're doing, we do the efforts to show that we are looking at all dimensions of poverty, that we are having ambition, that we are framing it around child poverty, because this is unacceptable. And because despite the fact that our labor markets, the unemployment has gone down, jobs are not stable, we see increasing rates of poverty, especially among children. So next year we will present a strong message at European level, the first EU anti-poverty strategy. And President von der Leyen also announced a strong ambition, so beyond the target that we have, that by 2030 we lift out of risk of poverty and social exclusion 15 million Europeans. 93 are in this situation currently. She expressed also our ambition to work together with member states, with the communities, with the economies, to eradicate poverty by 2050. And our actions and our efforts should be where our words are. The anti-poverty strategy is going to be one of the most complex and important tools that we put forward. We are working also with people experiencing poverty. We are looking at transport and energy poverty, and again, focusing on how we can best tackle child poverty. I am discussing, and this is not going to be an ambition, of course, that is solved by EU money alone. I'm talking with ministers of finance in every member state I travel about social investment, about how we can better, plan our investments so that we have this, not poverty check, of course, it's difficult, but let's see how we can boost our efforts. We are discussing with international financial institutions. Social cohesion, we need to go back to that. The European project is a project that we need to rebuild with every generation of workers and of citizens. And poverty is the most toxic and the most damaging enemy for our cohesion and for our social fiber. Innovation and excellence in one part of Europe can be totally annihilated by the lack of social cohesion and social fiber in many other parts. So fighting poverty, maybe sounds not as the central element of what we are doing in Europe right now, but it should be the underlying mindset. And the idea is that, of course, we all want to go in a good direction with our continent, to lead in the sector, to create prosperity and jobs, and to create, again for Europe, a momentum where we are able to recapture our growth, and growth means opportunities. But we need in this process to take everybody with us. We have the European Pillar of Social Rights. It's a good social compass. We need to hold on to it and to make sure that in all our efforts, we are bringing everybody on board to the best extent possible. Thank you, and I'm looking forward for your questions and observations.
Thank you very much, Vice President. Before we turn to social dialogue, quality jobs, skills, and other related topics, if you don't mind, let us begin with a question that is linked to some of the things you just discussed at the end of your speech. There's a question from Mr. Vitomir Ragus, the head of the European Relations Office of the Council of Europe Development Bank. Regarding the upcoming EU Affordable Housing Plan, how can we ensure that housing for vulnerable groups, the poverty-stricken, can get the appropriate subsidy support which affordable housing needs to a lesser degree?
After this, I'm going to participate in the project group. So commissioners meet with Dan Jorgensen in the Commission to work on the affordable housing plan that we will present in December. So part of this will be, again, tackling homelessness, and the housing first principle is what guides our work. There's a number of tools that we need to deploy. Of course, it's an effort that we do with member states. We put at their disposal European Social Fund Plus is, again, a very good example that is used and can be used to subsidize, people that are in situations of vulnerability that need temporarily support so that they have a roof over their head. But housing first means the ability of local authorities, communities, regions to invest in their housing stock, in their housing supply. So our work is a bit more strategic. How do we, modify the state aid rules, simplify, allow for public investment in such infrastructure, social infrastructure, public and private alike? How do we stimulate such investment so that these projects can really offer the housing first principle in reality to these groups? And then, of course, the EU money are part of the discussion. We had the midterm review on the cohesion policy. We modified the regulations a few months ago, proposed it, and now recently approved, so that member states can redirect the money that they have towards this priority. They are bonused, they are receiving bigger co-financing, bigger pre-financing, and some extra advantages if they invested in housing challenges, but it's just a part of the answer, absolutely.
Thank you very much. Now, yes, social dialogue. Let me invite Ms. Terlinch, the General Secretary of the European Trade Union Confederation, to take the floor. Thank you.
Thanks so much. And Vice President, I couldn't agree with you more that the social model is part of our competitive advantage. I also believe our workforce is part of our competitive advantage, and I really encourage all the companies here. We've got to talk Europe up again. We've got to get our mojo back. And I want to ask 2 questions, if I can. So the first, if you can tell us a little bit more about what would be in the Quality Jobs Act, because workers are really looking forward to that as answering so many of the concerns they have, which is about a fear of the future, that they don't know how they will succeed in the transformations and what that act will offer. And then my other question is in relation to the training. I meet workers and their unions all the time who are trying to get access to training, time off for training, and to get access to the right type of training. So I meet employers who say, we need skilled people. And they meet politicians then who say, we need to up our skills game in Europe. And so all of us believe in it, so what's stopping us? How are we going to break through this so that we make sure that workers, including older workers, get access to quality training as a condition of their job? Because a quality job is all about being able to protect yourself, but also to be able to progress. Thank you.
Thank you. As I've mentioned, the Quality Jobs Act would be a deliverable of the Quality Jobs Roadmap, which is a bit more strategic and broad. We will launch the first phase consultation where exactly this we want to understand a bit with you, with social partners, how we should approach this. What we are looking at, if I would be able to comment, areas where we see gaps, where we see that we do not have a framework of rules and protections in place, so we don't want to create an overlap. We want to see where we are, exposed. We are looking at algorithmic management, and we want to understand how we can encourage, the uptake of these tools in small, in medium enterprises, in corporations across Europe, because it's a unified, borderless, let's say, union when we talk about algorithms and AI. We are looking at the topic of great importance where we see social dumping and social abuse, and I've mentioned this a bit in the context of both cross-border but also national context. Long subcontracting chains. There are sectors, not all of them, where we see social dumping, social exploitation. I've seen examples in construction, in agriculture. I'm a Romanian. I don't need to see them from Brussels. I can tell them from members of my family and the neighbors. Of course, people choose it because they always are willing to sacrifice themselves and their protections for, some kind of concrete benefit, but this is not what Europe is about. So we need to look at liabilities. Who is responsible in a very long subcontracting chain that you have workers delivering a service or building a project that, be them European citizens, third country nationals that are underpaid beyond the minimum wage requirements of the member state, with no protections, with no coverage, with, sometimes not enough income even to make their living, to support their daily expenses. So this is about long subcontracting chains, and this is about exploitation. So we are looking at that as well. Health and safety, of course, I've mentioned it a bit, and this is regulated, but it's evolving. Let's see what it means in the perspective of a more digitalized and hybrid world. We know we had this discussion a lot about telework, right to disconnect. What does it mean to have a psychosocial risk? There is a different landscape of work where there is a lot of mental pressure. Of course, we think health and safety is about bodily health, but it's also mental health that is at stake, and it's something that is typical of current and will be more typical of future generation of workers. So these are a few examples, and other aspects related to health and safety alike. But it's not exhaustive. What I mentioned is the topics that we are looking at, because we are also assessing the fitness of our rules. We're discussing a lot about simplification, how we can make it easier to support our environment. And as we assess our legislation, we understand where we have gaps, where we have enough protections, where there's, maybe administratively speaking, a procedure that is too complicated to be applied. But these are areas that we are clearly looking at. on training. What's stopping us? I know you're going to say a right to train is what's stopping us. There's also the mindset, I would say. We need a comprehensive approach to training workers at 50, at 45, at 40. You know, of course, it's easy if you talk about skilling and reskilling at 25 or the 30, but we go in my age. It's not really an easy response to this, because we need to create, to stimulate, of course, and to create a conducive environment for training. So we have a number of tools. I mentioned the European Skills Guarantee for workers, which, like the child guarantee, like the youth guarantee, should channel a bit the investments in a strategic, in the sense of urgency in the reskilling of and upskilling of workers. And of course, at the same time, we need to look at tools like individual learning accounts. You know, you go to the doctor, you check your health, you take your vitamins, you take your pills. You should somehow yearly have the same kind of tool to reskill, to upskill yourself. You have an individual learning account, you have a certain type of resource, and you are able to update your skills, be it for AI or to reposition in your industry and company because it's transforming. Let's see how we are moving towards a better mindset for skilling of adults. Again, I'm not going here with a lot of bombastic responses, because it's the most sensitive. Training is about the motivation of people, and it's not only about them being part of a program, but really being open to it, absorbing the knowledge, and then being able to translate it into a job. I have worked so much with European Social Fund Plus in training programs and with vulnerable groups. And it was rarely about the resource available or even the opportunity to train. It was many times about the quality of the training and about the adequate connection between the content of the skilling program and the profile of the person. So here our employment services, public or private companies, and again, I think social partners are best placed to create an ecosystem of skilling and upskilling based on trust, on motivation, on really being efficient with our efforts. So yes, a bit of a response would be that.
Thank you very much. We'll certainly come back to social dialogue, but you just discussed skills, and there are a few related questions. There's one from Ms. Helena Lovegrove from Digital Europe. There was a high-level skills board that was announced with the Union of Skills. Could you share more concrete plans on how and when industry can get involved? And we have a similar question on what role can the industry play in driving public-private partnerships on AA skills across Europe?
So the high-level skills board, as I mentioned, would be set up in the months to come, so rather soon. This autumn, beginning of next year at latest. It is, as I've mentioned, a broad advisory that would include our traditional aspects, of course, educational providers, social partners, member states, but also representatives of industry from a more strategic perspective, looking at what are the industries that Europe needs to perform well or to position well, and having them as voices in the advisories that we are able to use their expertise. That again, yesterday I had a sobering discussion with the president of the German Automotive Association, and one of the main about the transitions and the impact on jobs, the transitions, especially the green transition impact and the impact of jobs. And they have a lot of research and data that we do not as calibrated and focused as they do. So we discussed about how we can share information, how we can understand a bit better the way they see the approach. Of course, it's one voice, but it's this kind of exchange that I think will really complement our efforts as well. So it's an advisory, as I've mentioned. It's not an executive structure, but instead of fragmented strategic dialogues and meetings and discussions, we want to be able to create an ecosystem that is all the time there and supporting the efforts of the Commission. Broadly speaking, we are going to deploy more tools to support the partnerships between academia, universities, and the business sector in the European, in the proposed competitiveness fund. You will see VET business partnerships mentioned there. The idea being that, again, for sectors that are key for our strategic autonomy and for our competitive edge, we are able to invest in the partnerships between cross-border, in a cross-border context, in the partnerships between vocational schools and companies. Vocational schools have been part of Erasmus, but not so much. I mean, we need much more mobility in vocational training to make this pathway much more attractive and also to support our companies. It's a national, again, and regional competence. There's a lot of debate here as well. What do you want to do with this? It's our standards. We don't want any European discussion for VET, but we do need skilled technicians. We do need labor mobility. We do need talent. And I think that in the context where we want to have, certain industries from raw material to finite product inside Europe, somewhere in the 27 member states, we need a system where we work closer together along the value chain so that we are coherent, because if you have an investment in a member state for raw materials and no clear skills strategy there and investment there, and the finite product in other member states where there are some important skills investments, you have an imbalance. So there needs to be an approach to skilling and to investment in skilling, and vocational skills are essential on a European level. That's why we have these step-by-step conversations, and you will see these partnerships mentioned in the European Competitiveness Fund, which is a fund dedicated for rather EU tools and industries, but skills are part of the discussion.
Thank you. Thank you very much. We've heard from European trade unions, and let us hear from European businesses and chambers of commerce. I would like to invite Mr. Ben Butters, the Chief Executive Officer of Eurochamp, to take the floor. Just before that, there's a question from the Spanish Confederation of Business Organizations. You have mentioned a number of measures regarding skills and under the roadmap. How will the Commission ensure that there is sufficient space for social dialogue at the EU level, to which we are committed under the European Social Dialogue Pact? I think that's quite related to what Mr. Butters could.
Yeah.
So then
Thank you very much.
Okay.
So yeah, Ben Butters from Eurochambers, which is the European Association of Chambers of Commerce and Industry. I'm going to start with a comment, then a plea, and then a question, if I may. Firstly, a comment in reaction to what you said. I was very pleased to hear your points about mobility of VET. That's an extremely important topic for Chambers of Commerce, and I think an area where the European Commission can clearly add value, and it's a strong component in ensuring parity of esteem between a purely academic education pathway and a more mixed vocational pathway. Secondly, my plea is don't forget small and medium-sized enterprises. It's wonderful that you're speaking with the German automotive section and that you're going to meet ASML later today. But there are millions and millions of small and medium-sized enterprises out there, and particularly towards the lower end of that, they encounter very different challenges in relation to skills requirements compared to large companies. I know you're aware of this, but it's also an invitation. We would very happily organise some visits to some small businesses in different sectors for you, should that fit in your busy schedule. And that leads on to my question, which is about the VET strategy, which is coming and which will build on the Henning Declaration, which we supported. How can we ensure that this strategy aligns VET with the labour needs of small and medium-sized enterprises? And will this high-level skills board have some kind of oversight role to ensure that that's happening? Thank you.
Thank you. I work very well with you, with SME United, with SGI, so not just with Business Europe, with all. I'm trying, of course, to have a balanced approach, and you are right. You have to think small first. It's not just about big investment and corporation approach, although we need also to look at ecosystems, and when you have semiconductors in Europe, that creates an ecosystem, or automotive, a huge ecosystem. Yesterday I've spoken yes, with automotive German industry, but the supply chain that they have across Europe. A lot of SMEs many times is also important, but I would love to, well, of course, work with you to set up also visits for SMEs, but I want to do that also in a context of the implementation of the current EU legislation, and I want to be able to be a partner of smaller companies in making sure that we respect EU standards, but that it's easy for them as well to do so. We present next year, yes, the vocational training, education and training strategy. It's a strong signal that VET is important at European level. As I've said, the shortages for VET jobs is critical. The attractiveness, we know, is not there. It was never there. I don't think ever, vocational jobs were necessarily the top. Now, even less than in the past, I will say to this room what I've said in other contexts. We are giving also a small signal. Starting from next year, the European Commission will receive applicants that have VET degrees in the Blue Book trainee program of the Commission. So it's not a lot, but it's symbolic that you have the same opportunity as a VET student, as a university student, that you are appreciated, that you are in the same environment, and that without you, the wheels cannot turn, which is in reality the fact. But maybe, parents, we as communities need to acknowledge that even more. So that's why I also discussed about mobility in the proposal for Erasmus, which is 50% higher. I will work so that we have better representation of mobilities for VET. It's clear that that's the approach. The whole concept of our work is to strengthen somehow the connection between the business sector and the education sector. I've mentioned already some of the tools. In the advisory and the high-level skills board, as I've mentioned, social partners will be represented, and stakeholders, stakeholders will be represented, so that we are able to voice also the different sized companies and organizations in our strategies. It's not, of course, easy, and I will not promise that we will be able to deliver solutions for every sector or for every region. But what we need to create is a momentum that will impact the policies and investments of member states, of regions, of cities, so starting from EU level, that we say, yes, we need to continue to invest in the infrastructure, in the training of the teachers, digitalization, support mobility for the students, pupils in vocational jobs. So it's a strategic work, as I've said. We put money forward, absolutely, we do that. We have the Pact for Skills, we will continue to have that on board as well. The Herning Declaration showed that there is political support for this. Let's see the tools. I mean, of course, as I've said, there are some tools that we propose, such as the idea of a VET degree at European level that has, certain not opposition, but let's say certain question marks. It's ambitious. By nature, I'm thinking, okay, but what do we do concretely? I mean, of course, it's a strategy, it's excellent, some money there, some money there. We talk a lot about it. I have a lot of bilaterals. We pilot many things. We try to boost, EU fund spending in VET, but what more? If you talk with VET students, they all want the idea of a degree that is complicated to build because of trust and recognition and standards between regions and member states. But we need, I think, to really be ambitious if we are to make sure that these jobs are filled and that the people that take these jobs are dignified and happy with them. Social dialogue, you mentioned a bit earlier. We signed a pact earlier this year, the Pact for European Social Dialogue, and I think it was a good moment, and I feel meeting social partners rather often. We just met for the Commission's work program for next year. I feel that we are, really using this tool. I'm under also the impact that I visited Nordic states, the Nordic EU states recently, so they make my head spin. Again, I'm an Eastern European. When you go and see the power of the historic power of the Nordic model, the social model, the social collective bargaining, what they achieve in skilling, in AI transitions, it's something that inspires. And I always tell them, we we need more of this at European level. We use the adequate minimum wage directive component that pushes member states to present plans to extend their collective bargaining coverage. We have the European funds to support the administrative and the organizational capacity of social partners. I think that we need to continue with this mindset. The true answer, but it is not something that we as Commission can influence directly. We facilitate it, and that's my wish. The true answer to the true pill to the best navigation possible of the times that we are seeing for jobs and for companies is, of course, good quality social dialogue. That would be, absolutely the case. That somehow Commission would be as laid back as possible and as on the margin as possible. But we are there in a tripartite context. We will meet also next week. Happy to facilitate the work of the social partners, especially on the complicated challenges and topics.
Thank you very much. You need to catch a plane, so I'm sorry.
Not a plane, the housing project group. Affordable housing.
I cannot ask any more questions. I will definitely pass this on to your team. Please say where you are before we get a final comment from you. Could we please hear from one of our sponsors, Microsoft, Ms. Nana Luis Linde, the Vice President of European Government Affairs. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. I'll be very brief. Just want to thank you for your comments. Thank you from Europa for another great breakfast debate. Congratulations on EU's bold vision, whether it's the Union of Skills, AI Continent Plan, the STEM initiative you talked about, a Play AI strategy. I think they're all initiatives that really put people at the center and talent. And talent and people have to be in the heart of European competitiveness. That is really Europe's strength. I'm often asked as Microsoft, did the train leave the station? Is it too late for Europe? We talk a lot about Europe lagging behind. And that makes me think about one of the most important books that was launched last year by Jeffrey Ding. He's an economy professor, and he's looking into what made a country successful or a continent successful during the previous technology revolutions. And what he finds is that it's not who invented the technology. So he said, for example, electricity. It's not the country that invented electricity. It's also not the country or the continent that built the infrastructure. So in the case of electricity, the power plants. In case of AI, the data centers. What is really the trick to become successful and competitive is the country or the continent that diffuse the technology and invest in the people. Invest in skilling the people. That's the most important component. I think it's a good reminder when we are talking about all the problems and the challenges we have in Europe, that we have so many talents and we have so many strong industries as well. So let's leverage that strength. And you can ask yourself, what's Microsoft's role? Yes, we've invested with the biggest AI infrastructure investor in Europe, but we invest also in people. Through our AI skills initiative, we aim to skill 9 million by the end of the year. Free skilling. For every data center investment, we do skilling investment as well. Our mission is empower every person and every company on the planet to achieve more. And of course, without the right skills, you cannot be empowered. So thank you again. And you can count on Microsoft to help in any way we can to make Europe successful. And we're happy to contribute where we can. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Linde. A final comment from you. Thank you very much, Vice President.
A final word, but not a conclusion. We are also working at the topic of AI in education, working with Vice President Henna Virkkunen. there's a whole discussion here about the balance that we have to keep, but it's, again, part of the process. And we are looking at how we can support also the training of teachers to use AI, but also our European EdTech ecosystem. So there's a lot on the plate right now so that we are able to invest efficiently in the future generations to diffuse technology and innovation. But everything that we do will need to successfully diffuse, or how should I say, recalibrate in the new context our European social model. So this is our challenge as we transition to an AI-powered world, to a more digital world, to new international, global shifts of power, to more protectionism, less protectionism. Protectionism is bad, but anyway, that's part of a complicated game. We need to keep our European social model at the heart of our work. And even for transitioning towards a more AI-friendly world, one that is part of our everyday reality, we need to maintain these standards alive, to adjust them, and to make them part of a new model. A model that is grounded in people, and it's making them powerful and strong in the market and in societies. I thank you so much. I hope that we have the opportunity to discuss again. It's not just about the economy, my portfolio, it's also about democracy. Maybe at some point we discuss about democracy, preparedness. There's a lot to be said there. It's still about skills, it's still about education. So I would hope that I would be back again, and thank you. A lot of success to you in what you're doing.
Thank you very much, Vice President.